Okay, so very good evening. My name is Gitika. We will be today analyzing the environment and disaster management questions of paper 3. And environment and disaster management is a constant feature in UPSC. Prelims में तो बहुत ही important है. It's equally important in mains, particularly because the two concepts are very interlinked. Okay, with respect to environment also the questions are somewhere bordering around climate change and associated disasters. Okay, so let's quickly start. I don't want to waste too much time in introduction. सीधा question देखते हैं. Okay, because you all have been very patient already. I appreciate that. So the number of questions in environment and disaster management every year has been hovering around 4 to 5, especially in paper 3. That does not mean that questions cannot be asked in paper 1. Paper 1 you already know has geography, so a lot of questions, you know, which you can say are overlapping with geography and environment are asked in paper 1 as well. Okay, but in paper 3, we are talking about paper 3 today, it's roughly around 4 to 5 questions every year. So this is the graph. All right, so let's see. In disaster management there are two kinds of questions which we have observed specifically related to disasters. One is specific hazard specific questions. So you will have questions on, let's say, landslide, urban flooding, earthquakes, so on and so forth. So if you see here, the questions in 2022 talked about cloudburst, question in 2021 talked about earthquakes, and again in 2021 it talked about landslides. Okay, so there are hazard specific questions. So when you encounter hazard specific questions, your preparation should go in a structured manner. Like, one, you should know how to define the hazard. So how is cloudburst different from normal rainfall? There is a proper definition of cloudburst, if you know. So basically, there is a certain amount of rainfall that is received in an hour in an area of 100 square kilometer, or 10 kilometers into 10 kilometers. If you receive above that, that is a cloudburst. Otherwise, it is a normal rainfall. So when you encounter questions related to hazards, you should be able to define the hazard, okay? Then you should be able to tell the reasons for that hazard as to why it happens, you know. So if you're talking about earthquakes, you will talk about what? Plate tectonics, right? You will talk about the movement of plates, all right? And then you should be analyzing with respect to that hazard, what are the major vulnerable places in the world, okay? In the world and in India, what is India's status with respect to it? So if you see, mostly it is talking about Indian subcontinent, India and India strategy. So hazard pe general hoga, but they will ask specifics with respect to India. And within India, what are the key nodal agencies that are working for every hazard, for every this thing, there is a separate nodal agency, okay? And for most of the hazards in India, the NDMA, that is the National Disaster Management Authority, has already given guidelines. So that guidelines becomes very important. Now, just want to warn you a bit here. If you say I will go onto the net and read about the NDMA guidelines, see, NDMA guidelines is like a 200-page book. Okay, earthquake pe 200-page ki ek book hogi on NDMA guidelines. You can't obviously read all of that, okay? So somewhere you should probably try to look for, you know, let's say synopsis or a summary of these guidelines. With Vision, the students who are already enrolled, there is something called value-added material which is provided to you that has documents on disaster management. You can go through that, and the summary is given there, okay? But I don't think it is open for all the, it's not an open resource on the website. I'll have to check with the authorities for that. And nonetheless, bottom line is, management NDMA guidelines, jab bhi kisi hazard ki padni hai, you should have at least 7-8 key points. And in all those key points, there should be talk about disaster preparedness, okay? You should be talking about the preparedness aspect. You should be talking about early warning. Then you should be talking about measures that can be taken. So measures will be divided into two parts: structural measures and non-structural measures. Most of the hazards, you know, most of the disasters can be avoided because of good structural measures. So for example, earthquake resilient buildings. Okay, landslide may again some structural measures if you take, they can be contained. So that is how हर disaster को, हर hazard को ये 4-5 specific points में पढ़ना है, and we have to prepare. बहुत time नहीं लगाना है इसमें, because the number of questions is around 2 in disaster management. Okay, all right, clear? This is just a brief overview. And then we have, then there are questions in disaster management. All right, so we were talking about hazard-specific disaster questions. Now we will be talking about disaster management conceptual questions also UPSC has asked. And mind you, we are only analyzing the last 5 years data, okay? So here if you see, discuss the recent measures initiated in disaster management by the Government of India departing from the earlier reactive approach. So earlier, not just Government of India, the world over, they had a tendency of disaster mitigation, in the sense कि कुछ हो गया उसके बाद the approach was more reactive than proactive. Now because of Sendai framework and all other, you know, UN disaster risk reduction strategies, it has been now understood by authorities all over the world that disasters need to be prepared for, and not कि जब हो गया तो उसके बाद relief कर रहे हैं, rehabilitation कर रहे हैं, rescue कर रहे हैं. Okay, one has to prepare for them. So this question is also talking about disaster preparedness. Then you have to talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability is an essential element for defining disaster impacts and its threat to people. Now, what is vulnerability? Can anyone tell me the difference between vulnerability, risk, and hazard? They all sound very similar, don't they? Okay, what is hazard? I've been saying hazard bahut der se, 5 minutes ho gaye. What is hazard? Look, one thing in UPSC, or kuch ho na ho, you have to have the confidence to speak up. Okay, and you have to have the confidence to articulate your thoughts. See, the problem with this exam is most of us know everything conceptually. Abhishek sir very nicely taught you everything about Chandrayaan and you know all the phases and everything is good. Understanding सबको होती है. इस एग्जाम में वो आगे निकलता है जो इसमें लिख पाता है. If you're able to write, okay, so you should be able to articulate your thoughts. Okay, so difference between hazard, risk, and vulnerability. Hazard is basically anything like earthquake hazard, okay, like a landslide hazard. That means एक tendency है उस area में वहाँ ये होने की. Okay, that is earthquake आ सकता है. We are in a high seismic zone. Okay, वहाँ पे landslide हो सकता है. That is a hazard. When you talk about risk, you know, अच्छा, vulnerability means yeah, so how much can it impact human population? Okay, so अगर किसी हिमालय के जंगलों में earthquake आ रहा है, will it impact us? It won't have much of a difference, right? So we are not vulnerable as such to that hazard in that place. And risk is when you combine both vulnerability as well as hazard. Okay, fine. Risk is equal to vulnerability into hazard. So basically, vulnerability means how much of a possibility it has of, how much scope it has of destruction to human life and property. All right, fine. So vulnerability is an essential element for defining disaster impacts and its threat to people. The question itself is telling you कि इसका मतलब सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि वहाँ पे earthquake आ सकता है. वहाँ पे अगर earthquake आया तो क्या impact हो सकता है, कितना ज़्यादा to people. That is what is vulnerability. All right. Discuss the different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. So there is social, there is economic. Okay, all those things come under vulnerability. What I'm trying to tell you with this is that there are questions in disaster management, both theoretical as well as hazard specific, which have to be prepared. And these are low-hanging fruits. These are low-hanging fruits because आपको थोड़ा सा ही पढ़ना है, but you will be done with the topics. And at least 4 questions, 3 to 4 questions you will be sure about. Economics, agriculture, all these sectors are so wide. Science and tech is so wide कि आप कितना भी पढ़ोगे आपको हमेशा doubt आएगा कि ये question आएगा कि नहीं आएगा. You know, but with disaster management and such topics are low-hanging fruits. तो इसको definitely पढ़ के जाना है so that when you are appearing in the exam, for sure you know कि इनमें से कुछ ना कुछ तो आएगा ही आएगा. All right, good, fine. Again, this question in 2019, it is about disaster preparedness is the first step in any disaster management process. Again, this is simply talking about emphasizing the importance of disaster preparedness. All right. Moving on. Fine. Now coming to environment. Okay. Environment, some questions have been primarily on asking on specific acts, laws, policies of both domestic, that is Government of India, and international. Okay. Generic questions कम आए हैं, not to say कि नहीं आए हैं, but कम. So they will ask you उसी में, you know, like for example, I'll show you. So here, coastal sand mining, whether legal or illegal, poses one of the biggest threats to our environment. Analyze the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast, citing specific examples. So this is one trend which is clearly observed. One is that in Indian context, things are always asked. Second thing is examples बहुत ज़्यादा पूछे जाते हैं. You know, give examples. And explicitly, of course, even if it was not written, you were required to write an example. But examples are explicitly asked. Okay. Then, for example, this question: what are the salient features of the Jal Shakti Abhiyan launched by the Government of India for water conservation and water security. Again, direct question asking about the objectives and provisions of the particular program. Similarly, National Clean Air Programme. Similarly, Environment Impact Assessment Notification. Okay, so these are examples of absolutely ekdam program specific questions asked by UPSC. Okay, and this is not to say कि सिर्फ recent programs पूछें. They'll also ask you questions on old programs. Okay, so if you see this slide, there are questions from international conventions. Okay, so this is like for example recent COP26 हुआ Glasgow में, उसके बाद उसके outcomes पूछे, ठीक है. Then उसी साल similarly in 2021 air quality guidelines were released by WHO. Simple question on that. In 2021 this question was asked on air quality guidelines in mains. The very next year in 2022 in prelims there was a question on air quality guidelines. Okay, so even if you don't get an opportunity to write mains, all the questions in mains become, or all the topics automatically become important for prelims. Clear? Okay. Similarly, again, see Glasgow, all right? And then Kyoto Protocol. This question is talking about Kyoto Protocol 1997 and 2022. And Kyoto Protocol has already been replaced by Paris Agreement, right? So now see, it's not just fresh but also old which are asked. Okay, now coming to this year's questions, this is just a brief as to what is the kind of expectation you should have, what kind of questions are asked. All right, now let's come to the actual analysis. Okay, dam failures are always catastrophic. Now this is a 10-marker question. Now with all the questions that we will, there are only 4 questions. All the questions I will show you some samples of introduction, what should be in the body or the main content, okay, and some samples of conclusion. Apart from that, I will show you some toppers answer copies as to, of course, we don't have them writing similar answers, the same answer, but similar questions which they have attempted in Vision IS test series, okay, and how they have attempted this question. Similar question. And then towards the end, I have also attempted one question, which I will share with you in the given time limit. So there is always a difference between theory and practical. When you're talking about theory, you're saying that, oh, ye aana chahiye, ye likhna chahiye, all these points should have been written. That's one thing. But when you sit down to actually write an answer within the given time limit, the story completely changes. Why? Because you're racing against time. You are racing against your memory. Points nahi yaad aate. Your mind is somewhere still working in the question, previous question, and you are required to, quickly remember points of the next question. So almost 20 topics you are running, and then you are writing 2 exams in one day. Okay, so imagine at the end and on consecutive days, essay, GS1, GS2 on next day, then third day you are writing GS3 and GS4. So by the time you are closing in on GS3 and GS4, your hands are also twisted because you are so tired of writing. 6 hours writing is not easy. Abhi 6 hours baithna hi kitna tough lag raha hai. Clear? So keeping these limitations in mind, you have to make your preparation in a manner where these things become easy. Okay? Bahut sari theory, see, if you go on reading about any topic, there is no end to it. Artificial intelligence hai, there is no end to it. You can granth ke granth padhe, padhte raho. There is no point. Here you are trying to crack an exam. And to clear that exam, you have to make your preparation very concise. Yaar, ये topic है, इसमें ये 4-5 point are important. These are the only ones that I will remember and revise, some examples related to it, and this is how I will attempt it. Okay, this is the best you can do because वही 4-5 points will be easier to revise time and again, especially when you are, closing your exams. When suppose your mains is in September or August में आप revision कर रहे हो बार-बार, आपको 4-5 point हर topic के मिलेंगे, तभी आप सारा syllabus cover कर पाओगे. You get my point? So we will analyze this paper on those lines, apart from what content should have been there. All right? Fine. So let's start. Dam failures are always catastrophic, especially on the downstream side, resulting in a colossal loss of life and property. Analyze the various causes of dam failures. Give 2 examples of large dam failures. Now, generally just start thinking what are the different causes of dam failures? Or can anybody define a dam for me? What is a dam? Okay. How will you start the answer? You know, what more will you write? Store water, very nice. For different purposes, it can be for water management, it can be for hydropower generation. Yes, good. That's how you have to keep your mind running. है ना? Regulate the flow of water. Yes, you were saying something? Yes, right. No, but this is talking about dam failures, not dam construction. Okay, so make that distinction in your mind clear. It is talking about dam failure. मतलब dam बनाने से पहले जो rehabilitation of people हुआ है, जो displacement of people हुआ है, that's a different story. This is a dam failure, so this is a disaster management related question. Okay, yeah. Correct. So basically you start, see I'll show you, when I go forward I'll show you how toppers have written simple answers, very simple answers, but just to the point उन्होंने information लिखा है. Okay, we'll cover that also. So simple, the dam is a structure built across a stream or a river to hold water back. Okay, dams can be used to store water, control flooding and generate hydropower. This is what all you said. यही बोला ना आपने, ठीक है? So no rocket science here. Now the question, it's a 10 marker question. 10 marker is 150 words. You hardly have scope for writing much. Okay, बहुत कहानी लिखने का scope ही नहीं है. So simply we're going to read what are the causes of dam failure. See, in general research has given, this is the percentage of dam failure. So for example, if there is an issue in the foundation or the stability of dam, okay, that accounts for 23% of failures. If there is an issue of overtopping, okay, for example, overspilling, all right, so that accounts for 38%. Then there is something called piping. Okay, what is piping? Piping means, so for example, if you know this is the dam and it is separating two streams, you know, two parts of water from here. Sometimes what happens, see, at the end of the day, this is just ground, right? थोड़ा सा maybe यहाँ पे concrete का वो किया होगा, but it is still impermeable, right? So water can seep down, okay, and come to the other side. So when it creates this channel, एक pipe सी बन जाती है, this is what causes piping. And because of piping, a lot of water actually goes to the other side, leading to a change in the foundation. So what was straight earlier became tilted. Okay, this is piping. Okay, of course you're not expected to know this. See, these are all things of civil engineering and structures. But this is just for your information now that the question has been asked. And then other issues, gate failure, human error, sabotage. What is sabotage? Intentionally somebody is trying to, like an act of terror, okay, or something like that, is a sabotage. So these are the simple causes of dam failure. You could have written this even without studying it, right? You could have written about uncontrolled construction, foundation failure, storage capacity issue. You can talk about excessive rainfall, that is a storage capacity issue, poor management, sabotage, human error. ये सब लिख सकते थे, ठीक है? Yes, absolutely. Okay, now the next part of the question is asking you talk about 2 examples of major dam failures. So anything that you know. Of course, Libya is the recent one. This you could have also mentioned in the introduction. The dam failures cause a huge amount of damage, okay, especially in the downstream areas. For example, recently witnessed in the Libya into 2023. Okay. Likewise, you can talk about Machu Dam. You can talk about this China's. This one is perhaps the most, the largest, dam tragedy that has ever taken place in the world. Approximately 1,70,000 people had passed away. Of course, okay, this was again many years ago, but still largest hai, so we are mentioning it. Okay. Now, simply considering the failures, measures during the design, construction, and management stage, these need to be taken. Planning needs to be done, and detailed planning for government in case of dam failure, and an institutional mechanism should be developed to ensure safe functioning. Simple, generic hai, okay? Now see, now I'll show you. After this question, I will show you one topper's answer copy as to how the topper has, this is also another 10 marker question, how has attempted such questions, okay? Let's go on. This is another disaster related question. What is oil pollution? What are its impact on the marine ecosystem? In what way is oil pollution particularly harmful for a country like India? Again, in Indian context, it is asking. Yes, you can see, if the question is not asking you about catastrophic failure, that the question itself is telling you that they are always catastrophic in nature. No, so you don't have to tell, see, loss of property and life, वो आपको question ही बता रहा है, okay? Why I'm saying this, it's already a 10 marker question. You don't have scope to, you know, write much, okay? So now you see this question, impact on marine ecosystems. Oil pollution, what is oil pollution? You simply tell what is oil pollution. Oil pollution is the unintended release or spill of oil or liquid petroleum into the marine ecosystem due to human activity. Kitna simple definition hai na? That is all that needs to be done. And what are the impacts? So what can it do? So basically what happens is when oil releases, you know, in the marine ecosystem, it sticks to the body of animals like sea otters, birds. So earlier, jo sea otters, birds who had this ability to, you know, dispel water, basically water was not attaching to their body, okay? It was not getting absorbed. They could repel it. That repelling wali property of the animals gets, you know, spoiled. So because of that, they start absorbing water, okay? And because of that, they catch cold. जो कि earlier पहले water उस पे बैठता नहीं था on their body, it starts settling on their body, they start absorbing water, because of which they catch cold, so hypothermia. And because of that, they also get exposed to harsh elements, so harsh elements through inhalation also, okay? Then there is trapping of juvenile sea creatures. So because the oil slick, you have seen that, right, in pictures, that oil is settled on the surface and does not give scope for movement to the juvenile creatures, that leads to trapping. Mass killing of marine sea life, of course, and there is an impact on mangroves. It is talking about ecosystems, so you have to not only talk about animals but also plants, okay? And destroys the insulating ability of fur-bearing mammals and birds. I told you this, okay? Simple hai. Now see this. Hypothermia, I just told that they water repel nahi kar pate and it gets absorbed and leads to temperature imbalance, okay? Now in the Indian context, why is oil pollution so important? See, India has a vast coastline, okay? So you mention about that. You talk about the coastal states of India, the kind of population that is residing there, they will be impacted. Why? Because majority of the coastal communities' occupation is fishing, right? Correct. So that gets impacted. And then our huge petroleum demand is met through imports. So again, we are dependent on the coast for that, because majority of the petroleum is transported via sea routes, okay? And these are some of the examples, okay? So same points, again thoda sa, in the Indian context, if you are talking about what are the different community, you know, impact it can happen in Indian context, similar points you can write with respect to India, giving some examples. So for example, in Chennai recently that oil spill had taken place and people because of that refused to buy fish because people thought it is contaminated. So it impacted not only directly but indirectly the fishermen community, so on and so forth. Now what I want to show you here is, okay, of course this is the conclusion that you can talk about. See, I wanted to show you this. This is the answer copy, if I'm not wrong, of Siddharth Shukla, rank 18. Okay, this year, Siddharth Shukla. Now if you see his question, the question is talking about the problem of flooding in urban areas is not only due to overflowing rivers, but also uninformed ways in which our cities are coping with urbanization. Discuss. In this context, mention the NDMA guidelines on urban floods. Okay? Now see his introduction. Urban flooding is a disaster that is both natural and anthropogenic. Recently, Hyderabad and Mumbai witnessed devastating urban floods. Kitta simple introduction hai. Is there anything complicated about it? Nothing, right? Then reasons for urban floods. Natural. Then he talks about wetland encroachment, siltation. See, he has mentioned all the points, but very fast and quickly, okay, in the form of a flow chart kind of. Natural में है, monsoon rainfall की वजह से है, because why? Because 80% of our precipitation comes from monsoon, and that means 3 months of the year or 2 to 3 months of the year receives 80% of the rainfall. बाकी सारा साल ड्राई रहता है, तो एक साथ अगर इतनी रेनफॉल होगी तो naturally we are prone to urban flooding. So he's mentioned that. He's mentioned about climate change. Then wetland encroachment, siltation, failure of urban planning, sewerage. Again giving examples like Mithi River and Yamuna. Everything is there in this answer without making it too verbose or too, big. Now, simply moves on to NDMA guidelines on urban flooding. Then he talks about 5-6 important points of the guidelines. Like I told you, it is a big document, but you just have to pick, the major summary from it. Is this clear? So are you able to understand? See, theory अपनी जगह है, एक concept को समझना अपनी जगह है, but to write an answer is a different art altogether, okay, for which you need practice. Okay, I don't want to waste too much of a time because you're already running very late. Okay, so these are the other two questions that UPSC has asked. Okay, this is talking about the National Wetland Conservation Programme initiated by the Government of India, and name a few of India's wetlands of international importance. Again, example वो आपसे खुद ही मांग रहा है, okay? Included in the Ramsar Sites. So this program was actually started in 1986. So why is UPSC asking about it now? Okay, what could be the possible reason? In this year's budget, the government has allocated budget for Mishti, Amrit Dharohar and PM Pranam. What is Mishti for? Mangroves, right? And Amrit Dharohar is for wetlands. Okay, so these schemes have been launched. So obviously, अगर कोई नई scheme किसी particular area में launch हुई है, you ought to weigh or you ought to measure the the success of the old scheme, how much that has performed. Okay, so this particular thing was covered in news very in detail. Now this is the website for indianwetlands.in. All information related to wetlands that you want, whether they are in Ramsar or not, everything, and all the programs related to wetlands can be accessed here. So this is the most authentic source. Okay. Just to tell you so that you can access these things later. Now introduction. Ab is question ka introduction. The question is asking you, I'll just take out the question here because I don't want to go back to the website. Previous slide. Comment on the National Wetland Conservation Programme initiated by the Government of India. It is just asking you to comment on that. Okay, so you can talk about Government of India started this program since 1985-86, or you can start with wetlands in India cover about 4% of the country's geographical area, and they play a vital role in waste regulation and filtration. Okay, water regulation and water filtration. So this program was started in 1986. Similarly, you can also talk about, if you don't know this, आपको नहीं पता है कि in 1986 में शुरू हुआ है या आपको नहीं बहुत detail पता है, write a generic introduction. Wetlands are ecosystems which exist at the confluence of land and water, such as mangroves, marshes, peatlands. India has lost nearly 30% of its wetlands over the last 3 decades. Okay, that is why it is needed that we focus on conservation of wetlands. Through the national program, government has taken following steps. Okay, the different kinds of introductions that can be put in for one particular topic. If you know, good. If you don't know, see, if you know, then do mention it in the introduction, because it kind of gives a perspective to the examiner that isko thoda aata hai. Okay, generic to har koi likh lega. All right, fine. Let's go forward. Now, the main content with respect to this is, see, basically the wetland program was merged with the National Lake Conservation Programme, and both were made into National Programme for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems in 2013. So ये अब जो program which is actually running is National Program Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems. Okay, under this program the government seeks to do basically 4 things. One is create a brief document for rapid baseline data, मतलब एक जल्दी से assessment कि इंडिया में कहाँ कहाँ wetlands हैं, you know, what is their size, what is their status. Then you talk about wetland health card. You know, you are assessing their conditions across 4 area categories, that is area, hydrological regime, biodiversity and governance. So एक wetland health card बनता है. उसके बाद there is an integrated management plan. A plan is devised for each wetland along with states as to how that wetland will be, you know, conserved, how the biodiversity will be conserved and its resources will be augmented. Okay. For that, citizen partnership, that is wetland mitras, will be created. So ये basically 4 aspects हैं उसके. Now going forward, these are the different aspects which are part of that wetland particular program. So identification, financial assistance, see, it is a centrally sponsored scheme. So all centrally sponsored schemes, what happens? Government of India shares the responsibility with the states or allocates certain funds with the states, and states also pitch in some money, and together they make for conservation. All right, so financial assistance is given, conservation and management, capacity building, research and monitoring, all these things are undertaken in that program. Now see, this might sound very generic to you, but the examiner is always looking for keywords. Okay, it's always looking for keywords. So because the question is talking about comment, you will not just mention about the achievements, you will also talk about the limitations as to why this program could not achieve its full potential. Why? A, because all the wetlands are not covered under it. Okay, right? There are all small kinds of ponds, small lakes which are not covered under this program, because this program was primarily tackling major ones. Okay, then because of that there is states apathy. The states were not responding to the, you know, conservation of these wetlands in a very diligent manner. Then there was a issue of invasive species. Invasive species is also an issue. All right, because of invasive species we lost certain wetlands. Okay, and of course climate change and data deficiency. Because of lack of enough data we could not you know, gather, because हमें पता ही नहीं है. So for a city like Bangalore had, you know, at every 50 meters Bangalore had a small pond. Now what is happening? Because of increasing urbanization, there is a tendency to fill sand in that pond and reclaim the land, right? Now that is happening, but what is happening because of that? Earlier जो बारिश का पानी आके उस pond में इकट्ठा हो जाता, that water does not have any place to go, because of which urban flooding is being caused. Okay, so these are the different impacts. Now see, these are the Ramsar sites of India. Currently we have how many? 75. That's because we are in the 75th year of independence, and that is why India recently declared 11 more. So we have 75 Ramsar sites. Okay. Now coming to the conclusion, you can talk about, again you can talk about Amrit Dharohar, Mishti, all these schemes in the conclusion. You can say that, you know, because the wetland conservation program has been going on, but to augment India's you know, resources further, we probably need to implement these programs in a better way. Okay, so let's just see a similar answer copy of another topper for another question. This is again a 15-marker question. One thing which I observed with respect to UPSC tends to ask more questions in a 10-marker question and less in a 15-marker. So in a 10 marker question will have 3 subparts. Okay, it will have 3 subparts. What is this, that, this. And a 15 marker will usually have 2 subparts, which means you are required to write more in 15, but sometimes your mind does not work on what all to write. And in the 10 marker, the challenge is because so much is asked, you have to put all that information in a short space. Okay. So let's see this. National Hydrogen Mission can be a game changer for India's rising energy demands. Comment. Now this is again a program of Government of India. So this is why I picked up this question. This is a program of Government of India. The question is asking you to comment on this program. All right. Now if you see the, okay, this is Gamini Singla, rank 3 of 2021. Okay. So she writes, in the recent budget of 2020, government planned to launch a national hydrogen mission to give boost to clean energy. Simple introduction hai, kuch nahi hai, theek hai? Then rising energy demands. So national hydrogen mission mein she is not restricting herself simply to national hydrogen mission. ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ उसके provisions दे दिए कि ये होगा उसमें. She simply builds a context because it is a 250 marker question. She talks about what are the rising energy demands of India and the world. Explains that rising population, urbanization, we have development goals, and gives a flow chart. Similarly, then she talks about national green hydrogen, sorry, not national hydrogen mission is a game changer and how. Then clean source, affordable, easy availability, alternative source, because there are coal sources are depleting, and government initiative will provide funds for infrastructure, boost the sector. See, all the points that you see are very generic. है ना, आपको पढ़ के ऐसा लग रहा है कि हाँ ये तो पता ही है इसमें क्या है. But this is the answer copy of a topper. The challenge is not in writing these points. The challenge is in writing these points in a span of 3 hours and 20 questions. This is the challenge. Okay? जब इतना सब कुछ लिखना, एक एग्जाम में 20 questions attempt करना, and then to write, fill that up is the challenge. Okay? So now, see, once she has given about the mission, then she talks about the challenges. Like we did in our structure, we spoke about the provisions of the program, then we talk about the limitations of the program. Okay? So in the challenges, she talks about skilled manpower is a challenge, lack of technology, 60% of energy demands are still being met by coal. And then finally, way forward mein, she probably ran out of space and time, yet she wrote all the points in a format like this. What does it tell you? See, what it tells you is that you should first have the courage to whatever your thoughts are, be articulate with them, it's very important. Unko likho. Then you should be able to structure your answer as per the demands of the question and address all parts, which you obviously know by now. But at the same time, try and make it concise. So for this level of preparation, do you think one needs to read the whole green hydrogen, national hydrogen mission ka document? No, you don't need to do that. You only need to read the newspapers. And from the newspapers, you need to pick 4 or 5 unique points. This point is different from this point. Clean source is different from affordable. Affordable is different from available. Affordability and availability is not the same. Affordability means it is cheap. Available means it is there for you to consume. Agar available ही नहीं है तो cheap का क्या करेंगे? Clear? Then alternative source. Again, this is a unique point. My point being that you have to gather 5 to 6 unique points for each of the questions. All right. Now I attempted this question on my own, okay, in the given span of time. Not to say that I did a great job, but point being, this is how I structured the answer. I talked about wetlands. I talked about their importance in India. Then I underlined that they have a major role in water regulation and biodiversity. Then I talked about the government launched this program. Okay, fine. I simply said it's a centrally sponsored scheme and following activities are undertaken it. I drew a flow chart. Okay, and flow chart mein I've written about everything, those baseline information, identification, conservation and management. These are the words which examiner will look for in your answers. Do you get my point? Number aise milenge. सिंपल लिखने का कि ओके वी शुड कंजर्व, इट हेल्प्स इन बायोडाइवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन, इट विल प्रोटेक्ट एनिमल्स, इट विल प्रोटेक्ट वाटर एंड दिस दैट, उसके मार्क्स नहीं मिलेंगे. द एग्जामिनर इज लुकिंग फॉर दीज टर्म्स. Okay, this is what will fetch you marks. But the key takeaway here is not कि answer कैसे लिखना है, the key takeaway here is notes कैसे बनाने हैं. This is how you have to make your notes. You get it? आप battlefield में वही करोगे जो आपने preparation में किया है. आप preparation में कुछ और कर रहे हो और फिर exam में कुछ और performance नहीं होगा. That will not work. So what we have to do is the note making has to be in such a manner that you can put it on the exam. 5 मिनट बचे, जल्दी जल्दी स्क्रिबल करके एटलीस्ट सारे पॉइंट्स लिख दो. यू शो मी वन टॉपर्स आंसर कॉपी वेयर द टॉपर हैज वेरी नाइसली नीटली रिटन इट लाइक अ बुक. Nobody has the time and nobody has the mental bandwidth to do that in this exam. Okay, so this is the key takeaway from this session. आपको कंटेंट बाहर मिल जाएगा, आपको नॉलेज सारी मिल जाएगी, डॉक्यूमेंट्स खोल के देखो सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन है. बट वॉट वी हैव टू लर्न फ्रॉम दिस सेशन इज हाउ टू प्रिपेयर and how to write answers. Okay, now going forward, again I drew the limitations of this program again in a flow chart because I was running out of time. I put a clock and I wrote it. Fine. Then the question, I'm addressing the second part of the question. The question is talking about comment on, I think it says, yeah, it says name a few of India's wetlands of international importance included in the Ramsar sites. So मुझे जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट साउथ वेस्ट के कुछ मेजर पता थे, नेम अ फ्यू है, ना 2 है ना 4 है, आई ड्रू. ओके, एंड आई हैव सीन टॉपर्स ड्रॉइंग वर्स मैप्स ऑफ इंडिया, मच मच वर्स. सो डोंट लाफ एट माई मैप मेकिंग स्किल्स, इट डज नॉट मैटर. अच्छा है, okay, but it does not matter. See, the ratio should be overall okay. So if you know, in this case, for example, my Arunachal went a little down, it should have been a little up with Rajasthan on this tropic level, okay, on this latitude. These things matter, but overall क्या है, जब when you are running in the exam, you are just running against time, ठीक है? Quickly you draw the figure and you talk about that, and then you just conclude. While wetlands are crucial for our defense against climate change, they also act as buffers against storm. Now, this again, one thing I wanted to tell you. अगर आपके पास फ्लोचार्ट करने का भी टाइम नहीं है एंड यू वांट टू गिव मोर एम्फोसिस ऑन द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ वेटलैंड्स, तो अपने कंक्लूजन में कॉमा कॉमा करके वो 3-4 पॉइंट्स लिख दो. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल कंक्लूजन में या कहीं भी यू कैन राइट दैट दे act as a buffer against storm, they prevent flooding, control erosion, purify water, ऐसे 3-4 करके एंड इसको अंडरलाइन कर दिया. सो द एग्जामिनर नोज दैट यू नो द इम्पॉर्टेंस एंड रोल ऑफ wetlands. Okay, and simply then with the announcement of new schemes like Amrit Dharohar Mishri, the government is taking a step in the right direction. खत्म, यही करना है, ठीक है? लेकिन पढ़ाई कैसे करनी है? When you're preparing notes, when you're reading the particular text, उसमें को स्टोरी की तरह समझ लेना है, लेकिन लर्न क्या करना है? When you note it in your notebook, आपकी नोटबुक में इससे ज़्यादा इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं होनी चाहिए. एक यहाँ पे मे बी साल का नाम लिख लो, एक सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम, बस ये 4-5 पॉइंट इज व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर दिस प्रिपरेशन. क्लियर? बिकॉज देयर सिलेबस इज सो मच, क्या क्या करोगे, ठीक है? ऑल राइट, नाउ this question, last question, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has predicted a global sea level rise of about 1 meter by AD 2100. What would be its impact in India and other countries in the Indian Ocean region? अब sea level rise related information रोज न्यूज़ में आती है. Almost every day there is, you know, an article related to climate change and sea level rise. So first of all, tell me, what are the causes of sea level rise? Glacier melt, global warming is an overarching reason. What else? Global warming चलो मान लिया, और very good, this is the point I was looking for. Thermal expansion of water. So global warming से सिर्फ ice melt होके और पानी नहीं बन रहा है, जो पानी है वो भी expand हो रहा है. Water expands, you know, because of application of heat. So that is also taking place. In fact, 40-50% the reason for sea level rise is thermal expansion. Then what else? Greenhouse gases, again same global warming point. See, this is what happens. हमें लगता है हमने बहुत पढ़ाई की है, But when you come down to writing unique 5-6 points, you won't get anything. This is how the orientation of this examination has to change, how you have to prepare for this exam. Okay. This basically was an article in the news that Indian cities are at risk due to sea level rise, and in this particular article it clearly talked about Indian Ocean region. You know, ki kaun si Asian cities were this. I will come to this point later. But all I wanted to tell you is, see, in the causes, when you see what are the causes of, I think I've covered it later in the slide. Causes में there are 3-4 main points. Global warming तो है ही, climate change, global warming एक में लिख लो. Global, because of global warming, one, you will write thermal expansion. The examiner will look for this term, thermal expansion. Then the examiner will look for the term glacier melt. Then the examiner will look for the term melting of ice sheets. How is glacier melt different from melting of ice sheets? How? Which one is land-based? Ice, see, this, so the thing is, ice sheets and icebergs. So ice sheets are of course both in water and on land. Icebergs, for example, they are already floating in the water. है ना? अगर हम बचपन में नहीं पढ़ते थे, एक ग्लास में आपने आइस क्यूब रखा, वो मेल्ट किया तो वाटर राइज होगा या नहीं? नहीं, because there is no change in the volume, right? So icebergs which are already floating in the ocean, even if they melt, there is a very minuscule role that they will have to play. But glaciers and land-based ice sheets, because they are not already in water, that is extra water coming in the sea or ocean. So this is a big technical difference. Okay, this is what the examiner will look for, these two different points. Okay, clear? तो अभी जब भी न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ना है ना, इसको ऐसे ही पढ़ना है. You have to, this particular article that I showed you has all these points. If you have time, just go and read this. It is simply talking about the reasons and comma करके दिया है, but all these points are different. So that is what the examiner will look for. Now why, if you talk about the introduction of this particular question, you can talk about ki, okay, mean sea level rise in Indian Ocean is this, and it is larger than the global mean. Indian Ocean region में जो mean sea level rise कर रहा है, that is higher than the global mean sea levels. Okay, you can talk about India's coastline and so on and so forth. Or you can make it, if you know about it, you can always talk about this report of the 6th assessment cycle of IPCC, this particular report called Special Report on the Ocean and Cryosphere in a Changing Climate. This particular report talks about that the sea level will rise from this to this. So if you mention this report, obviously balle balle, extra marks, ठीक है, the examiner will be happy. बाकी सब तो सब कहानी लिख ही लेंगे, ठीक है? Then, or you can talk about the vulnerability of India. कुछ भी नहीं आता तो ये तो आता ही है. 7,500 kilometers of coastline of India, and then how many people are living in this, ठीक है? Then see why I am repeating these points, although this is not the right answer. This is not a model answer. The question is, if you don't know the model answer, or if you don't know, how do you write an answer? And I have shown you toppers answers copies. They don't have anything brilliantly extra data or something like that written. Simple points cover kiye hain. But they have mentioned it. Okay. After this, we will be seeing the copy of Ishita Kishore rank 1. Okay. And then, yeah, I talked about why sea levels are rising, thermal expansion, glaciers, icebergs, and frozen seawater. ठीक है? ये सब चारों अलग points हैं. Clear? All right. Now, you can give anything in your this. So, what is the question is talking about? What would be its impact in India and other countries in the Indian Ocean region? पहले तो general impact आप सोच सकते हो कि क्या होगा, you know. And if you are talking about impact of something, always divide it into environment, economic, social. Always. By default तो 4-5 points वैसे ही अलग-अलग निकल आएंगे, ठीक है? So environmental impact में what will be? Submergence and flooding will take place. There will be erosion of coasts, clearly. Loss of ecosystem and habitat. Salinization will take place because of inundation of seawater. There will be loss of biodiversity also. That can also come in this. Okay. Economic impact, loss of agricultural land, loss of infrastructure. So a lot of good infrastructure, especially in cities like Visakhapatnam, Chennai, it is at the risk of being drowned because of rising sea levels. Okay. Then you have loss of livelihood for people, impact on fisheries. Economic may you can also talk about disruption in tourism, because most big number of Asian cities, especially in the Indian Ocean region, are dependent on tourism. Okay. So that. Then social impact में भी लिख सकते हो, displacement of people, health implications and security concerns. Is this clear? Fine. Moving forward. This is a map, okay, of the Indian Ocean region. These are the major cities which are prone to it. So when the question is asking you that what would be its impact in India and other countries in the Indian Ocean region, the examiner is expecting a map. And करना कुछ नहीं है, सिर्फ major cities जो है वो mark करनी है. ये कर सकते हैं ना हम? How difficult is that? कि sea level rise होगा तो ये सारी जो coastal main cities हैं impact होंगी कि नहीं होंगी? So how difficult is that? You can do that, right? And in India you can obviously do this. Now this is a simpler one. I would prefer something like this in an answer. Is this clear? So these are hacks of scoring more. When see in this exam you will never have the confidence कि यार ये मैंने उस book में उस page में पढ़ा था, ditto question आया, I can write the answer and I can get good marks. This will never happen in this exam. You will always have a question about which you will have some idea, about which you will have little bit of idea, but you will not be sure. That will always be the case, always. So what is smart is we need to know how to structure our answer, which is actually the art of answer writing. How to structure our answer, how to make notes, prepare in a very concise manner, use that key terms in an answer, draw maps, give a good introduction and conclusion. All right? See, this class, the aim of this class is not to teach you environment and geography, disaster management related topics. The aim of this class is to give you certain tips and tricks as to how you can attempt the answer. Whether you know it, great. If you don't know it, then what you should have and what you could have. Okay? And then of course, you can always end it with a nice tourism, nice conclusion. You can talk about regional cooperation in the Indian Ocean region. You can talk about this Indian Ocean Rim Association. You know about this. You know about BIMSTEC. You know, you can mention all of that. आप कर सकते हो इसमें, ठीक है? So in a conclusion, you can mention that. Now let's see. Why is it here? This is what I wanted to show you. Okay, now this is the answer copy of Ishita Kishore rank 1 this year. Okay, now if you see the question, given its vast resources and technical expertise, India can play a key role in assisting the Pacific small island developing states, yani ki small island countries of the Pacific. Clear? So yeah, so the question is talking about how India can play a key role. That question was on similar lines, you know, okay? So how it can play a key role in dealing with the impact of climate change, analyze. Now this is a 10 marker question, but you see, simply she talks about India is being seen as the net security provider in the Indo-Pacific region. Ek line, bus, simple. And then she goes on to talk about India's key role. So as a climate leader, she talks about all the strategies of India, so that we have initiated as a climate leader, okay? International Solar Alliance, CDRI, Panchamrit scheme. Then, of course, she talks about the largest economy, how we are in a position to help, why we have a key role. Then we have an approach of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So not only she is mentioning the important initiatives that India has taken, she mentions about the, you know, the soft side of our diplomacy as well. And then about India's economic strength. Then assisting states with resources. So then she talks about what is the need for global climate finance, what is the support principle of loss and damage. What is loss and damage principle? Loss and damage principle is regarding climate damage which has already been done in, you know, such countries or otherwise, how India can cover up for that. Not India. Loss and damage principle basically comes from UNFCCC. Okay, that agreement has been recently signed, and it has been decided that a loss and damage fund will be created, under which countries will give fund for, अभी तक तो सिर्फ mitigation की बात चल रही थी, अब adaptation की है, okay? So that countries which have already incurred a loss or already incurred some problems, उसमें fund में से उनको help होगा, all right? So that. Then she talks about establishing historical responsibility of developed countries in CBDR. Fine. Then she talks about global south, how global south is important. Then India's technical expertise kya kya hai. She then mentions about all the important projects of India. So we have solar energy, disaster resilience, maritime expertise, Samudrayan project. Okay, again, see, vast coastal line, 7,500 km has made India introduce equipment driven approach. That is, for example, use of plasma cutters in cyclone Amphan. So these are all points which only a person who has read the newspaper can write. Okay? When you will write points, if you have not studied, you will write generic points. But these points show reflect a person's knowledge. But उसको बहुत elaborate नहीं करना है. उसमें crisp फटाफट नाम लिखने हैं, and you just have to mention it. And then finally, she winds it up by saying, India is in the top 10 of climate change performance index. Empowering these states can ensure it is the goal, its goal of becoming Vishwa Guru, that is one world approach. That goal can be achieved. Kitna simple hai? The introduction was so simple, and then the conclusion was also simple. But see, I was listening to Aditya sir, he told you that 3-4 numbers sabke aa jayenge. You know, out of 10 mark, everybody will score a 3 or a 4. But the person who will actually get into the final list, get selected, will have 5 marks. And that 1 mark extra for which we are fighting in every question will come through such answers, where you are writing more in less words, which is also what UPSC tells. Okay? So the key takeaway from this session is how you have to study. You have to study in this format where you are making concise notes, remembering the important points, and knowing what to fit where. All right? Not every answer, see, when a faculty comes and tells you an answer or a model answer, the faculty has a benefit of hindsight. He already knows the question. He can prepare a very good answer. But you cannot do that as students. Why? Because when you will be in the examination hall, something absolutely new will come up. So in order to prepare for that challenge, we have to see how toppers have done it. How, and through and throughout, I have shown you toppers of, you know, like rank 1 to top 20 ranks, how they have written answers. There's nothing extraordinary. It's just that good keywords they have not missed, and they have addressed all parts of the question. So your preparation from here on, your note making, your style of reading has to be like this. अगर कोई topic, कोई newspaper पढ़ रहे हो, students keep asking me how to read the newspaper. I spend 4 hours reading the newspaper. I'm not able to finish the newspaper. I'm not able to finish note making from the newspaper. If you try and jot down the whole sentence, how will you finish the newspaper? Even a printing machine cannot do that. What you have to do is you have to jot down just the points. Just 4, 5, 4. हर article में से maximum 4 या 5 points you can take out. That's it. That is it. That is all that is required. And that is all that has to be remembered. All the faculties who have come here, they have talked to you about an introduction, a body, a conclusion. They have mentioned the points that you could have written in 1, 2, 3, 4. Every faculty has told you, you know, give the name of some specific data regarding it, or some specific schemes that the government. They are all asking for specifics. आपको specifics करना है, general आप खुद भी कर लोगे. You are smart enough to do that. Is that clear? So I hope this session has been a little bit, you know, of a learning exercise for you all, because going forward we have to change the way we prepare. What happens is usually in UPSC there is a lot of bombardment of information right from the start. The moment you start stepping into studies, there is so much material, so many resources, so many classes. You just end up getting lost in that. We don't want to do that. Okay? जितना पढ़ना है, थोड़ा पढ़ना है, बार-बार पढ़ना है. This is the only thing toppers have done. All right? Thank you very much.